Here we are again, Paul Brennan in Wellington, and
Martin Noakes.
how you doing, Martin?
I'm fine.
Okay, windy weather lately. Plenty of stories of missed approaches coming into Wellington. I know one guy who experienced two in a row and got in on the third one.
Yeah, and I know somebody who had to go back to Auckland, spend the day there.
Yeah, I'm still curious to know the ratio of missed approaches, 737s versus A320s.
That would be very interesting, yeah. Yeah.
Because let's look at it. There's more chance of a pod strike with an aircraft lower to the ground,
Yep.
7-3.
Yeah.
A320s sits a long way off the ground. And also fly-by-wire, gust alleviation, all of that.
Yes.
You wonder, don't you?
You do. It'd be interesting to see those statistics, but I don't think we'll ever get them.
The reason I mentioned it is because anecdotally I've known some people have come in on Jetstar, guaranteed to be A320s in the last week or so, into these 130 kilometre an hour winds. That's the strength they were warning the worst storm in Britain was about to experience.
Yes.
We get that every week here. And they got in.
Our completely unscientific analysis, when we've been down there taking pictures, we've always said the A320s look a lot steadier on the approach, don't they?
Yeah, they touch down and they stay there.
Yes,
They glue themselves
yes,
on.
they
and
hit
that's
the
it.
runway and they're down.
Yeah,
Whereas we've seen 7.3s wobble their way down the runway quite
Ooh,
alarmingly.
Close, yes. Right, big story talking about Wellington. It's been in the paper the last week or so, and that's what I would describe as the insane talk of establishing a regional airport and presumably relegating Wellington to some sort of
Housing
second
estate.
line, or housing estate or emergency strip or something, and putting the thing up near Otaki or Levin.
Nah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That they need to spend that money on extending the runway in Wellington
Yeah.
so they can bring real planes in.
I'm worried, grandiose plans. They're talking about cargo terminals and they're talking about a regional airport in an area where hardly any of the people in the region live.
It muddies the water because if this gets any traction, there'll be 15 years of talk about it, and then the discussion about how people would get to the airport. That discussion would then begin. So we're 30 years away. Even if everyone was for it, it would take 30 years.
And you know what happens? While people have their eye taken off the ball thinking about that, nothing happens
Absolutely
in town,
nothing
and
happens.
that's where it needs to happen.
And that's where it needs to happen, quite.
And it only needs to happen in a modest way. It just needs to be a lengthen. They've probably got enough terminal facilities, don't need any more.
Yep.
And, cargo, well, most of it can go on underfloor out of a city like this. It doesn't need to have a dedicated cargo terminal.
Well, I'd like to know what cargo.
Produce of some sort.
Yeah, they seem to be managing all right now.
Yeah.
If you wanted a cargo airport, why wouldn't you put something at Oahakia?
Well, we've got a cargo airport. It's called Auckland.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
And we're a small country, and why would you want to duplicate that?
But if it was dedicated cargo flights, I think, if you could run a 747 into Oahakia 2-3 times a week, and that would take all the cargo.
Yeah. Problematic, though. It's an Air Force base. And
There's no Air Force.
But, well, there sort of is. Okay, so we have to send CT4 trainers up after those drone-flown F-16s. But,
There you go.
with a bit of clever flying and some creativity, we could probably get a few
Got
strikes.
a number 8 wire.
Yeah, some number 8, fly-by number 8 wire, it's called.
Yeah.
There are airports in the world. Well, what's that one in Portugal?
Madeira.
Yeah, it's built out on,
They've built the whole thing on pillars.
looks like a wharf, a big wharf.
Yeah, I think the pillars are like 25 meters high.
Right.
And there's a forest of pillars, and they've built the runway, and that can take.
It's a good half the runway.
Yes, it's a massive structure. Didn't take them long to do, and they're landing A340s there.
Well, looking at the picture, the overhead plan of the airport and the extension area, it's not even very much.
No.
It just juts out a little, about level with the tanker wharf in Evans Bay. And
I don't know why they want to extend it that way, though. I'd have extended it the other way.
yeah, well, it's deeper and the seas are more fierce at the other end, aren't they?
But there's less there.
Well, but you'd think they'd do it the cheapest way, and $300 million. Gosh, that must be getting up around $750K a metre.
I think that's what happens when you've got very few construction companies in the country. I think there's a sort of a cozy duopoly going on there.
Well, that'll keep the Fulton and Hogan families in business for the next, I don't know how long.
Yeah.
But we sort of agree that it's sort of dumb to even think about another airport.
I think so.
The chief executive there, Steve Sanderson's quoted in Stuff as saying that they commissioned the report on costs and benefits of the runway extension and had to look at all possible alternatives.
No,
So
maybe they've been told
hence
to do that.
And they get a new story. Queenstown Airport and its relationship with supply firms, resort infrastructure and tourism, according to Southland Times, pumps $274 million into the economy there every year. Yeah, it's not bad.
No, it's useful.
It's more than it ever used to be there.
Yeah.
Used to be a little tin shack there.
I mean, they bring in tons of Aussies.
Yeah. It's busy airspace.
Yes.
Tricky too.
And those international flights, they bring... I'm always surprised when I speak to friends of mine in Australia. I mean, they do go to Queenstown and they do go skiing.
Nationally, according to the story, airports represent 25% of the New Zealand economy.
Wow.
It's huge, isn't it?
Or 25% of the New Zealand economy passes through them, right?
Yeah, well, 40 billion is contributed indirectly to the economy. So that's that passing through effect. Upfront, 419 million is the direct cash contribution. And the research found Queenstown and Hamilton airports combined contributed 7% of the industry economic input.
Although Google made 48 billion last quarter.
Okay. 48 billion.
Apparently, I'll check that, but I think it's 48
That's mind blowing.
billion.
Well, that just makes this look like
Yeah.
a hobby.
Sell all the airports and make a search engine.
More New Zealand news. Christchurch Airport excessive profits criticised by Commerce Commission is a headline in the business section of the Herald, October 15th. Christchurch International Airport's target profits for the next 2 decades have been labelled excessive by the Commerce Commission. Hey, this is New Zealand.
I don't know whether Christchurch is the same as this, but there are these behaviours that kind of disturb me. For example, Wellington Airport. There's no competition now with taxis or shuttles. You want to use a shuttle to take you to the airport or pick you up from the airport? There's very few
They have
shuttles that are
their
allowed to do it.
prescribed list, don't
Yes.
they?
Yes.
And they'll all charge within Kiwi.
Yes,
yeah.
and those guys all have to pay to enter the airport, they have to pay to exit, and you're just like, well, that's not really fair, because I don't have any choice. I can't go to another airport.
No.
Essentially, these monopolies talk of customers and everything, but actually we're all hostages and victims.
We are. It doesn't seem there's much anyone can do about it. The Commerce Commission released a draft report for the Ministers of Commerce and Transport. Their proposed prices over the next 20 years target an annual return of 8.9%. Is that too much in this day and age?
Better than any of us can get.
8.9%, and they want it guaranteed pretty well, don't they, for the next 20?
Well, they can guarantee it. They can manipulate that any way they want, and it's generally only up.
And the Commission's report shows a firmer form of price regulation is needed in New Zealand, said John Beckett, Executive Director of the Board of Airline Representatives in New Zealand. See, they're not happy. He says the present regime is too light-handed.
He's probably right.
And we must acknowledge when our flag carrier does well. 2 global travel accolades reported last week in Scoop Business. First, readers of the prestigious Condé Nast Traveller magazine have named Air New Zealand one of the top 5 international airlines in the world. And in China, the airline has been named in the top 10 at the country's annual China Travel and Leisure Awards. Well, that's good.
And well done.
Yeah, well done. And don't say we never mention that.
No.
Because we do.
Yes.
And, yeah, good on you.
But they won't get an award for seat width.
Oh gosh. Well, that's...
Here we go.
Here we go. I knew that had come up at some point.
It's coming up.
Okay, well, you get it off your chest. Say what you have to say.
New Zealand are one of the, well, many airlines are doing it now, but some aren't, particularly in their 777s, 10 across in the back.
That's huge.
Yes, you certainly notice the difference when you fly on an old 777 with 9 across and you get on a new one with 10 across.
Right.
To the extent that when I had the choice in April, I didn't fly them because I didn't want to sit in the back of a 777. I flew Singapore Airlines.
Okay,
10 across on an A380.
So if you're anything to go on, there's now a customer pushback going on.
Yeah, I think 17.5-inch seats are just not wide enough.
Yeah.
Especially if you're travelling on your own. If you're travelling with a party of people and you don't mind jostling shoulders, that's fine. But if you're on your own and you've got someone next to you, you constantly have to twist and turn to keep out of their shoulder space.
What's the math, though? If you were to widen the seat width to what, 18?
18 and a half.
18 and a half. How many seats are you going to have to lose? You're going to have to lose...
30, or 30, however many rows are on the plane, 54.
Jeez, you know.
Yeah, but Singapore's not putting 10 across.
Yeah, but they must be getting some sort of premium for those seats
Well,
to
they
make
must
up
do,
for
yeah.
the loss.
Yeah. So, and a good example is the 787, marketed by Boeing as an 8-acrosser.
Yeah.
All the airlines are putting 9 in, and that is going to be real tight, 9
Right.
across in a 787.
Yeah.
And the A350 was marketed as a 9-acrosser, and some airlines have already said they're going to put 10 in, and that's going to be real tight.
What about seat design? Is there anything to be gained from seat design?
Well, it's actually shoulder width design is going to be the killer. And now Emirates are talking of on their medium length routes with the A380, they're thinking of putting 11 across in the A380, so 3, 5, 3.
Gosh. Could you put them at different heights?
There have been some very interesting concepts where they stagger seats, so each seat slightly offset backwards
Yeah.
and forwards.
Yeah.
But that people worry about that because if a table's down, it creates a very effective barrier if the seats are staggered. And they're worried about emergency egress.
Right. What about the different heights? So
Yeah.
that shoulder bump thing's not happening. You might have
Yeah,
someone's...
to add weight and structure and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
They should just make the seats a bit wider.
Some of them will take a hit.
Yeah, they will, and that's true. But Air New Zealand should be 9 across because they charge Earth anyway.
Okay. Well, see, they got the best of all worlds. That won't change.
It's a big deal, and there's been quite a lot of press about it in the States, funnily enough, because, of course, the Yanks are possibly
Getting bigger.
getting bigger, as I guess a lot of Western nations
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Obesity, I think it's called.
Yeah, so there was a case recently where there was a guy who was really, really large, and they made him buy 2 seats. The airline made him buy 2 seats.
Was that Southwest?
I think it was Southwest. He got to the plane, and they were in 2 different rows.
How do you do that? Never thought about that one.
No.
No, but if you're getting a good deal, you can almost overlook it. And if you've got good entertainment, you can almost get through it. But-
It's
Yeah,
uncomfortable for a long time.
No, it is. You're right. Okay, well,
So, Singapore Airlines, they're still 9 across.
yeah, but for how much longer? The Emirates tsunami continues to roll on. They're adding third daily A380 flight from Dubai to Bangkok, May next year. Second daily A380 from Dubai to Munich on March next year. And flights from Dubai to Paris, Charles de Gaulle, 2 times daily to 20 times weekly. Work that one out on the 1st of August next year. So it just keeps on coming, doesn't it?
Think about it. I think Heathrow is getting 5 a day every day of the week.
Crikey,
A380s.
Dick.
Think about that. 35 a week.
Yeah, but from Emirates?
Emirates,
Good golly.
5 times daily to Heathrow.
That's incredible.
That's amazing, isn't it?
That's well over 2,000 seats
Yeah,
a day.
a day.
There must be the traffic.
Yeah, I reckon they'd be picking up a lot of the Qantas traffic now as well, because all those Qantas frequent flyers, they'll all be getting in on it.
Can I ask an obvious question? Why have Qantas?
Yeah, well,
I mean, seriously, when you've got this sort of hardware and the sheer numbers of aircraft, I mean, you'd be tempted to ask, what's the point of Qantas?
they're talking of a daily A380 from Dubai to Perth,
Right.
which raises the question: will that A380 then come onto New Zealand, like all the other Emirates
It's
A380s do?
a long way. You can't do it in a day, can
But
you?
there'd be a lot of
It's 6 hours over, 6 hours back, plus a 2-hour turnaround. That's almost another full day.
Oh, yeah.
But again, you got to ask yourself. I mean, Qantas is being completely white-handed, isn't it, on that kangaroo route?
Yeah, and I reckon if they did find a way to get that A380 to come onto New Zealand, there'd be a lot of Kiwis flying with an A380 to Perth if they had the chance.
I'd go.
Yeah.
And they're still talking huge orders.
Yeah. They're looking now at the new 777 being announced by Boeing, be ready in 2020.
That's the
777X. Mm-hmm. Yeah. With
It's longer?
Well, there's 2 versions. There's the 8X and the 9X. And the 8X is slightly longer than the current 300ER. Mm-hmm. It's going to have a plastic wing.
Oh.
And should be ready in about 2020. Now, Emirates is running over 150 777s at the moment. I think they've got 174,
That's
including orders.
mind-blowing. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
And they're looking at a 30 billion order for up to 100 of these new 777s.
Well, so that's not a one-for-one replacement, is it?
No. So that's would be the biggest order in Boeing's history. It's good news and bad news because it would signal that Emirates isn't going to replace all their 777s with the new 777. And the fact that they've ordered A350s would attest to that.
So the majority 777 is the 300ER they have, but they have quite a few 200s as well, don't they?
They're slowly leaving.
Are they?
Leaving quite quickly, actually. Yeah, they want to standardise on the 300ER.
They've had the 200 for quite a while.
They have.
Yeah, well over. Geez, it'd be coming up 20 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty close, yeah.
And the head of Emirates has said he basically wants to be a 3-plane airline.
Yeah. So A380, 777X, and
A350.
A350.
Yeah.
And speaking of the A350, there's talk of another version now.
Yeah, the A350 1100, which is a double extension of the base model.
Wow. So I'm just trying to visualize the length of that.
Yeah, it'll be about 50 more seats than the current 1000.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it'll be about a little bit bigger than a 777-300ER.
Ah, right. And that test flying regime well underway. They've got the second one up in the air now.
If you look on Flight Radar 24, and put in a filter, call sign filter for AIB, you'll see all the Airbus test flights up in the air, and often there are two A350s buzzing around France.
There you go. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, Korean has announced that they're buying, and this must be a big sigh of relief in the short term anyway, over in Seattle. They're going to buy $3.77 billion worth of Boeing aircraft, including 5 747-8 intercontinentals or international.
Yep. They've bought 747-8Is.
Yeah. And now it's been a long time since Boeing's had an order for this plane.
It has been a very long time. In fact, Boeing are cutting production on that plane to 1.75 of them a month. And there's even been talk of the line closing in the not-too-distant future. Now, this is an interesting order, because one of the things Boeing has said when JAL, Japan Airlines, went off and bought A350s for the first time in their history, that they've placed such a large order with Airbus for large aircraft. And now there's their ANA orders up in the air. One of the things Boeing said was that if Japan doesn't want to play with them and do the run the industrial programs and help Boeing build the planes, there's other countries in the region that would be just as interested, if not more so.
Bing.
Exactly. One of them is Korea. Korea have signalled that they are quite interested in getting a lot of the industrial work for the Boeing planes, and maybe this is a bit of a sweetener.
So this would be not only the airline, but the Korean government doing something.
Korean government, yeah. In particular, work on the new 777s.
Wow. Okay, so how do you think the Japanese are supposed to feel?
Well, Boeing have benefited greatly from some pretty wild subsidies from the Japanese government, but Airbus are now saying if you buy more Airbus planes, we'll put more work in Japan. And currently, they do buy about $1 billion worth of gear from the Japanese already.
Right, okay.
Airbus do.
Yeah.
So,
the rest of that order, by the way, is 6 777-300 ERs and 1 Dreamliner.
a top-up for the Dreamliner, yeah.
And speaking of Korean, the Asiana 777 San Francisco crash is still being investigated, but talk of an auto throttle failure.
Yes, or rumours, I guess we could call it at this
That'd
point.
be a rare thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would not be a good thing at all.
Well, there's a certain view of Korean airmanship historically. I mean, it'd be fair to
Yes,
say.
they've had a few problems in the past.
Yeah, with crashes caused by very fundamental things going wrong and people not doing what they are supposed to. So I guess the stereotype is to maybe apply that to that crash.
Yes, in this case it might
not be.
Well, one could argue that insufficient monitoring...
Well, that's the thing. You got an auto throttle, but you should still be keeping an eye on the airspeed.
You should still be flying the plane.
Yeah, and if it's decaying and not, you need to disconnect it.
You need to push the throttles.
Yeah, exactly. And that didn't maybe seem to happen. Just reported that Boeing, the 737 MAX program, they're announcing steady development progress since reaching their firm configuration for the MAX in July, and they're saying another 1 to 2% efficiency on the engines on the 737-8 MAX. So that's now 14% fuel efficiency improvement over today's most fuel-efficient single-aisle airplanes, they say. Of course, that ignores the Neo, which will be coming in.
Yes.
And the battle continues.
Well, this is classic positioning and posturing, isn't it? The program's only going to deliver planes about 18 months after the Neo comes online. It's selling at a ratio of 40% to 60% for the Neo. They have a few issues caused by not redesigning the undercarriage. They can only put one type of engine on, and that engine is going to have a smaller fan due to the height off the ground, so it's probably not going to be as fuel efficient. A lot of the percentages improvement they talk about are at extreme ranges, which a lot of people don't fly.
That's right.
And then when you read online, there's all sorts of talk about the main problem with the Boeing product at the moment being takeoff distances. They need enormously long runways when compared to the Airbus.
And this is not necessarily going to go away with the MAX.
No, it'll stay the same.
Surely you're in a very vulnerable position when you've got your competitor aircraft available a year and a half before, where everyone can see how that performs, and then you've got to come out of the blocks with something that's as good as or better.
And the Neo requires far less engineering than the MAX. The MAX is quite a big change. The MAX is they're changing in the rear bulkhead to try and get more room in the cabin.
Yeah.
There's some quite large structural changes there. The Neo, it's a strengthened of the center section of the wing.
Yeah.
Bolt new engines on, and home you go.
Yeah, so they're not fundamentally redesigning
It's not as big a redesign. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, it's still going to cost a couple of $1 billion, but it's a lot cheaper than the Boeing effort.
And there's a story this week too that JetBlue has become the customer for the 10,000th A320.
That's a lot of A320s, isn't it?
It's a lot of A320s.
Yes.
That's quite impressive.
That's very
isn't
impressive, yeah.
I wonder if they thought that when they were rolling that thing out back in the late 80s that it would
they
get
were
to 10,000.
Crashing it into the forest of the air show in
Yeah,
France.
yeah, 2 weeks after it first flew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Back to Boeing. That's Ethiopian Airlines 787 that had the rather unfortunate accident or fire in Heathrow. Looks like they're finally getting around to repairing it.
Okay, so how do they repair the composite
Well,
fuselage?
yeah, this is interesting. So what they've done is they've taken a barrel, a fuselage barrel that was manufactured for another aircraft, apparently. They've cut a series of patches out of it, which they're going to keep in stock for future repairs.
Can I say that must be quite expensive?
Yeah,
to take a whole huge part of one repair.
They've cut a series of patches out. So what they're going to do, and they've already started, they've built a couple of tents around the Ethiopian 787 that's still in Heathrow. They've taken the tail cone off with a tailplane and vertical stabilizer. They're going to cut the burnt bit out. They're going to take a patch of exactly the same size as the hole, place it in, so it's not going to be overlapping in any way. They're going to butt the two sides of the patch, or the patch up against the current fuselage. They're then going to put a doubler around the inside, and then they're going to rebuild the stringers, which they'll have had to have cut away. Now, the challenge is going to be to get the glue and composite and everything to cure properly. They have to subject it to a vacuum and about 260 degrees of heat, which is going to be quite difficult.
So what, do they have to build a tool to do that?
Yeah, somehow they're going to have to build something around this to suck all the air out and apply the heat.
Yeah.
And as somebody said, there was an expert, he was talking about this, he was saying, the difficulty is that unlike a weld, which you can x-ray and see if it's good or bad, you can x-ray composite as long as you like. You won't be able to tell if it's good or bad until you test it. And of course, the final test would be test to destruction, which of course they don't want to do.
Yeah, so that defeats the whole
So it's going to be
purpose.
There's going to be a lot of eyes on that because it's taken a long time for them to come up with this, so it doesn't look like something I had in the back pocket. And it's going to be very interesting to see how well it works.
They must have envisaged a scenario where the part of the fuselage skin was burnt. They must have.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they thought that it would be that big so early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe they had more time. I thought they had more time to work on it. But it's a hell of a thing, and you wish them all the luck because it's. Probably,
Well, would you want to be flying in that aircraft?
Well, I mean, you'd have to take their word for it. They'll test it and they'll do everything they can. I'm sure it'll be.
But how do you know it's not just a lurking weakness in there?
Well,
that could go in 10 years.
Yes. So that's another airline I can't fly.
China Southern turned up in Auckland with the first scheduled 787 flight into Auckland.
Yep.
Bit of a celebration there. Saw a few shots, photos of the inside of the aircraft. Looked real nice.
Oh, I'm sure it's a real nice plane.
Got here without any problems.
10 abreast though, narrow seats.
Yeah, but
Pack 'em in.
Nice livery that they had, special livery.
It looks nice. The plane looks real nice.
Yeah. You're not convinced, are you?
No, I'm over convinced.
Speaking of milestones, last KLM MD-11 flight, the week just gone.
They hung in there a long time.
Why do you think they went so long with them? They obviously didn't have a problem with them.
No, they didn't have a problem. I guess they were cheap to run. They're a great plane to fly, and I flew in a few Swissair MD-11s back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. They were a very comfortable plane to fly in. Quiet, smooth.
Of course,
they hadn't all crashed by then, so I wasn't that nervous.
Well, this is the thing. KLM seems to have had a pretty well trouble-free operational period with the MD-11. I haven't heard of any. And
Swissair didn't have any. I mean, they had that one that caught fire and crashed into the sea, but
But both airlines had DC-10s, didn't
yes.
they? And they had pilots who came off DC-10s and went to MD-11s.
Yes.
And knew how to fly these things.
Yes. The MD-11 was said to be quite quirky, but I guess training and probably not jumping around between types. And if you had enough of them, you could keep the pilots current and they knew what to do. They probably had a lot of special operating procedures that they'd written up themselves.
Yeah.
You read flight tests and that, the people that fly them love them.
Yeah. Well, just looking at the last week's schedule that KLM operated, mainly Canada to Amsterdam, but there are a few to Los Angeles.
Yep.
That's quite a long flight.
And they had a cockpit like a ballroom. I mean, it was massive.
Yeah, huge. With that female computer voice that keeps talking at you. So, end of an era, and it looks like most of them are off to the desert now, doesn't it?
Yeah, although
See-
there's a few flying as freighters, aren't there?
Yeah, I guess they'll go for a while, but
But that's when they seem to battle the most, isn't it? Heavily laden, windy runways, tired pilots.
what was that one that the new Hong Kong airport, Chip Lap Cock, Mandarin Airlines one?
Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that
they
flipped over?
flipped it.
That happened at Narita too with
Yeah.
the FedEx. They land too hard, they break, the wheel punches up, breaks the spar, and they flip over.
Flips, yeah. I had a friend who flew in the day after that happened. There it was, upside down in the median
In
strip.
fact,
so to speak.
there's a shot of the other Mandarin MD-11 taxiing past the upside down one.
I always thought the MD-11 looked. It was a practical looking plane. It kind of looked.
It was big.
Yes,
Get
it was.
underneath one.
It was a big plane. Yeah, and it had the winglets, which are now coming back.
Yeah.
Those split winglets.
Yeah, the with the little bit on the bottom too.
Yeah, and that's what the Max is going to have. The 737 Max is going to have a very similar winglet.
Well, they first flew that on a Continental DC-10 in the early 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a picture of it, of them putting on the winglet. Okay, so there goes the MD-11. That'd be it for passenger, as World Airways still operate them. A troop charter, probably. But I think, that's it for the passenger MD-11, isn't it?
I'm not sure who else flies them.
In fact, the irony is that it looks like the Byman DC-10 is going to outlive, because that's got a few weeks to go,
Yes, it does.
as the last DC-10 passenger service in the world. It's going to outlive the MD-11 this week or next.
Yeah, it's going out.
The end service. And of course, they've got 777s.
Yeah.
They got another import-export bank loan.
It's not a subsidy though.
No, it's not. No, it's not a subsidy.
No.
For countries that don't have no money.
No, well.
Okay, let's look at gadgets. Everyone's raving about these curved screens. I've only just found out about them. They sort of curved to wrap around your face, sort of, are they?
Well, there's two. There's LG have just come out with a screen which is curved. I don't know. I guess you'd say vertically. So it's like a traditional telephone handset.
Right.
It's a concave
Right.
telephone if you hold it in portrait mode.
Okay.
And then Samsung, rather perplexingly, have come out with we're not sure it's going to be announced or if it's going to be a real product, but they've shown a demo of a phone which is curved the other way,
Okay.
which is kind of odd because you wonder what that's good for.
You hold it up to your
If you hold it
your face.
in landscape mode, it's curved,
Yeah.
concave, so maybe for watching movies it's quite nice, but when you hold it up to your ear, it's kind of the middle of the phone
It's
curved away from you.
The wrong shape.
Yeah.
So the other one would make more sense.
I think it's a bit like 3D TV. Let's make curved phones. We're not sure why, but let's do it.
But
because
I mean,
someone will buy it.
does the screen experience any better? I'm just trying to
No.
work that out. If you get some sort of better
Well, it is
perspective
better
on the view.
if better is curved.
Okay. Okay. Well, it might be. So they're doing it because they can.
Yes. That's
And how are the screens made? Are they? How can they curve them?
Well, I think this is part of what certainly LG. They are highlighting the fact that they can now make curved screens, and in fact, they are now working towards flexible screens that will be curvable.
you roll out,
Well, not that flexible.
or you can
but
you can sort of wrap around or something.
At the moment, they're flexible enough that if you drop them, they've got a bit of give and they won't shatter.
Oh,
But
okay.
They've also come out with a whole range of televisions which are curved.
Oh, so it's going to be the new
we're
thing,
not
isn't
talking
it?
big curves. It's
Subtle.
very subtle.
But just enough to be different.
I guess that's where
Okay.
they're going with
All
it.
right.
Yeah, they look nice. I actually had an older Samsung which had a slight curve, the Galaxy Nexus, and I must admit I did find the curve quite nice.
Okay, quite nice.
Quite nice. No more than that.
Okay, I'm just trying to work out where that falls on the spectrum.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's not bad,
Yeah, it's quite nice,
but it's not a
bad.
feature I'll be looking for.
Okay, but you could see how this could become a big hit, but no one sort of knows why.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, a slight curve, a vertical curve, it does, it definitely makes it slightly
Yeah.
nicer to hold, and
Yeah,
it fits to the side of your face. But given the fact that I very rarely use my telephone for actually making telephone
Well,
calls
there
these
you
days,
go. It doesn't need to be in that shape.
No, not really.
What about Apple? Do you think they'll do this?
No.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so no one's going to be queuing up outside the Apple place for the new curved screen
No,
iPhone.
Apple just have to make it a different colour. They get people queuing up outside.
Isn't
all
that
night.
crazy?
Yeah, it's amazing.
How can they sell more but make less money? I've noticed that they announced that this week. They've sold more, but they've actually made less.
Yeah, I guess they're more expensive to make.
Yeah, and pricing maybe is pressure on pricing.
And they've just made a massive investment in the software because they've updated all the phone software, so that must have taken a bit of a hit. And they've done something else very interesting recently is they've just updated their desktop operating system, OS X, and for the first time they've given that update away for free.
Well, that's like Microsoft, isn't it?
Yeah, and Windows has just done the same thing. They've updated from 8 to 8.1. and that's a free upgrade. But Windows within a family, the upgrades were
They're about a third of the price of the actual software, weren't they?
Yeah, now they've been forced to get away for free, basically because the 8.0 was garbage.
And you have to keep people loyal.
Yeah.
Somehow. Was it garbage, was it?
It wasn't very good.
Well, that's not a very technical term.
No, but it's an accurate term in this case.
Well, we're out of time again. The half hour has flown. So we'll be back again to talk more about aviation. In the meantime, it's Paul Brennan
And Martin Noakes.
saying goodbye.
Cheers.